Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be Thunderbolts, number 2 would be Sinners, number 3 would be The Accountant 2, number 4 would be a Minecraft movie, and number 5 would be Until Dawn. I got so close, unfortunately, flip-flopped on 2 of the film's positions, so I only got 3 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend. If you were able to get your predictions right for this weekend, here are your shoutouts right now. Unless you didn't get it right, then I'm sorry. Try again next time, like me. Anyways, number 1 was, of course, Thunderbolts. Let's just not beat around the bush here. Obviously, it was going to be Thunderbolts, even with the incredible holds that Sinners has been having, which we'll talk about in a second. Obviously, it's the new big Marvel movie. It'll be number 1, even if it's not to the, standard of like a fucking Avengers or Iron Man 3, whatever the other highest opening Marvel films are. Black Panther obviously thrown in there with the Ryan Coogler connection. Anyways, I think a lot of eyes are on this one just because it's like, okay, it's obviously not one of the bigger teams. It's not one of the bigger name ones. It's a lot of supporting players now in like a lead role or like a larger ensemble and more focused on them. So is it going to open to the same amount of numbers? Probably not, but just where's it going to land? And it did overall open to 76 million domestically. Now, as far as like the domestic openings for the MCU, this is 30 million over the Marvels, which is obviously their lowest, 21 million over the Incredible Hulk, 19 million over Ant-Man, 11 million over both Thor and Captain America, the First Avenger, 5 million over Eternals, and then 1 million over both Shang-Chi and Ant-Man and the Wasp. So that's not too bad as far as like opening up on the lower end, which, like I was saying, I think we were all kind of expecting in the first place. Not too bad at the very least. It's only 4 million below the opening of Black Widow. That being said, also because of just great word of mouth from Rotten Tomatoes and then CinemaScore, I think this could have the potential to not necessarily do a Sinners, but at the very least, maybe when the official numbers come out on Monday, maybe bump up a little more and get a little closer to Black Widow's 80 million opening. Maybe even, get a couple mil over that, and that would be pretty dope, actually. Worldwide, it is sitting at 162 million right now, so that is the official like global opening for the 3-day. Captain America Brave New World, I'm only mentioning this because this was a couple months ago, and I'm sure some people will look at it. This is about 28 million below that film's global opening. I'm not sure if anyone is like signing, warning alarms or whatever. Like I said, like I feel like we were all kind of expecting Thunderbolts to not be one of the big event opening numbers, but it's basically how it's going to debut, and then if it's going to be able to, have staying power, which I'm going to cross my fingers over. I put a little asterisk in the title because number 1, I thought it was funny because, the official title of the film has an asterisk, right? But I also, it's similar to kind of how I was trying to go about talking about Brave New World when that opened, was like, okay, it opens pretty well, but now it's all about staying power. And, Brave New World did go on to gross a little over 400 million. Of course, we were talking about the potential of that film's initial production budget of 180 to be even higher, maybe even before marketing costs because of, rumors of extensive reshoots. And just looking at the film, it's like, yeah, this reaps of like some last minute stitching and everything, you know what I mean? So, and especially compared to the other Cap movies, it's like, yeah, 400, just barely squeaking by Quantumania, if they even did that. That doesn't cut it, you know what I mean? This one, in this instance, though, I'm a little more likely to believe that the 180 million budget listed here is more accurate, just in the sense that I have not heard any rumors of any extensive reshoots, like we're going back, it seemed like this was made in a timely manner, like when they actually started principal photography, it seems like they're delivering it on time, and they also seem fairly confident in it, so everything about this production and just even the storytelling, how it just feels very specific and like they're honing in on something. It doesn't reap of like these stitched together messy other big budget flops or disasters, you know what I mean? So I'm more likely to believe that this 180 million is pretty accurate, if you ask me. So having a worldwide debut of 162 is not too bad, and also if the good word of mouth is to be believed, and next weekend, considering there's not really a whole lot of competition, I do feel like it could still have a steady holdover. At least I personally hope that as well, because, in case you couldn't tell, I did really enjoy this movie, but I'm hoping for the best. I feel like with Sinners, I was a little more confident on that because the buzz was buzzing. You know what I mean? With Thunderbolts, it's a bit like, well, you know, Marvel has had a long track record of, even in their heyday, still having like these big drop-offs because you have front-loaded opening weekends. But then again, Guardians 3 back in 2023 was able to, you know, have these pretty impressive holds, all things considered, for the MCU because of just fantastic word of mouth surrounding that. So I'm hoping the same for this, and I'm hoping that, you know, this one can be looked at as a success, especially since, you know, it's one of their good ones. Everyone's asking for a good MCU film. Here you go. As far as the MCU overall, domestically, it needs 8 million until it outgrosses the Marvel. So it's, you know, it's still got a ways to go until it outgrosses some of these lower ones overall, but they're on the right path there. Worldwide, it needs 37 million to outgross the Marvels. And then for a director, Jake Schreier, obviously, this is his highest grossing film so far. Not only is the domestic opening weekend 76 million over Robot and Frank and 64 million over Paper Towns, his other movie, but it's also already outgrossed the entire domestic run of Robot and Frank by 73 million, and Paper Towns is by 44. And then when you go to the worldwide numbers, it's 158 million over Robot and Frank and 77 million over Paper Towns. So, you know, asterisk is in the title just because it's like, okay, we have some good foundation here, and it seems like just from what I have in front of me as far as like good word of mouth, it seems like there wasn't like a huge behind the scenes drama as far as costs and everything. I think they're in a decent spot, but let's see how it goes next weekend. So I don't really want to add any more to the, you know, speculation or anything right now. As far as like what I'm seeing though, this is not a bad opening, so there's room to grow. Let's see if it does. And also go check out the film if you're a little, you know, like unconvinced or like unsure, skeptical. I know I haven't put out a whole video yet. I try, you know, sometimes it's so hard to fit them in with everything else going on, but if I can do a quick one right now, pretty fun, pretty good, really emotional when it counts. So would recommend it just based off of that alone. I got a really good couple cries in there. Anyways, number 2 was Sinners, having another incredible hold. Hell yeah. This one, as far as like the, you know, other records go, is the best third weekend for a horror movie ever. And then it is the second biggest third weekend for an R-rated film. So it beat out Joker and Oppenheimer's third weekends by just 4 million. It's below Deadpool and Wolverine by 20 million. But still, you know, like that's still pretty fantastic. You know what I mean? As far as what it made this weekend, though, it did make 33 million. So that adds to a domestic total of 179 million. Like I'm saying, man, you know, another impressive hold here after opening to around 40 or close to 50, and then second weekend it's a little over 40, and then only being in 30 for your third weekend. Yeah, that's incredible. It'll probably continue to hold over well, even with Clown in a Cornfield next weekend. And then worldwide it is sitting at 236 million. So we were talking about, you know, when it came out, like it's either a 90 to 100 million production budget, initial production budget, as I saw on Wikipedia. At this point, now that it's 236 million, it's like, well, either way, either number you pick, they've doubled it, and they're, you know, closing in on like a triple point at some point. So that is pretty stellar if you ask me. For Ryan Coogler, domestically, it is 274 million away from Wakanda Forever. I'm telling you, with these domestic holds really taken off, it's inching even closer to these other MCU Ryan Coogler films that I thought Sinners would, you know, maybe never even be able to touch. It's like, I still don't know if it will, but it's getting closer, and that's just cool to see for an original film. Worldwide, it finally did outgross Creed by 62 million. It is now sitting behind Wakanda Forever by 623 million. Obviously, when you look at the numbers, the domestic one is what's really bumping it up. You know, worldwide, it's not really taking off as much, which I feel like makes sense because I'm sure it's banned in some places, you know, like, you know, China has like the no ghost rule. I'm sure like some other places are like, ooh, spooky vampires, get away from me. Or, you know, some countries are just racist. So, you know what I mean? I'm sure, you know, it hasn't taken off there in other places as much as the US, like domestically, for those reasons. But still, this is like still a great achievement, and it's just always great to come back to so far. So yeah, nothing to complain about. Let's move on to number 3, which is a Minecraft movie. Yes, this is the one that overtook The Accountant 2, which of course we'll talk about in a bit. They made 13 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 398 million. So for video game films, it is 176 million away from the Mario film. Worldwide, it is sitting at 873, closing in on $1 billion. Which is really scary. It needs 486 million until it gets to the Mario film now. So still in both spots, the second highest video game adaptation of all time. And then for the year 2025, only worldwide numbers, it is behind Naja 2 by 1.096 billion. Do you think Warner's or Mahjong or whoever is like so like really concerned about the like when domestically they became the highest grossing film of 2025, they were like, oh hell yeah, we got this in the bag for a while. But then they look at the worldwide numbers and they're like, oh, we're not going to have a number one ever as far as like that area, that list, you know, it's fucking Naja too, which I hear is pretty good. I decided to add in some, just because it felt like very boring to keep repeating the same thing, I decided to add in where it is for the all-time run. So domestically, it is number 52. It is about to be in the top 50 highest grossing domestic runs ever. It is 7 million over Far From Home and just 2 million shy of Frozen. So it's obviously still rising in the ranks, and some other films it's going to easily overtake very soon. As far as the worldwide one, a little lower, which, you know, makes sense because you've got quite a few like billions out there. It has outgrossed Batman v Superman though by just 1 million, and it's sitting behind Chamber of Secrets just by 3. So currently it is the 86th, but you know, close to the top 5 domestically, and then worldwide it is in the top 100 highest grossing films worldwide. So pretty good all around for this movie that I don't care for and wish it wasn't as successful as it was. Did anyone go to the fucking block party thing? I think that's why it overtook The Accountant too. It had that little bump because they added extra showings for like the block party thing, which is basically just like what audiences have already been doing. Not all audiences, but most audiences like are just doing anyways, you know, and they just added extra show times for that, but they're probably just going to happen anywhere else anyway. That's so fucking stupid. I hate that they're embracing that. That's the thing I hate the most, is that they're embracing it. Director Jared Hess, Warner Brothers with all this shit. At least Jack Black walked into a theater and was like, hey guys, like I know it's exciting and everything, but can we not like make this miserable for theater, you know, workers? No one else cares, it seems. Sad. Number 4 is The Accountant 2, the one truly suffering from these block parties. It made 9.4 million, adding to a domestic total of 41 million. Obviously, having a debut of like a little over 20 million and then dipping down to 9.4 is not a great sign. As far as like outgrossing the original film, it still needs 45 million to get there. Worldwide, you know, we do have some worldwide numbers. It is sitting at 54 million, so that does place it 98 million away from the original film, but you know, on a budget of 80 million, and they're just like only sort of kind of squeaking by, it can probably, you know, like we were talking about last weekend, I think The Accountant did pretty well in theaters, but then obviously in the years since, it's done really well in the home video market, or streaming, whatever. The Accountant 2, you know, it probably still could do that, but as far as like the theatrical numbers, it is kind of like, yeah, I do wish that was maybe a little bit, but it could also be a thing of like, I don't know if we've talked about this, it could just be a thing of time. It's been 9 years since then, you know what I mean? And, you know, they're kind of embracing like a little more comedic tone. I don't want to say it's like a complete departure from the original film, but they definitely are embracing a bit more of the comedy aspect, and I do wonder if word of mouth like that might put some people off, because when I went to the theater recently to see Rosario, I overheard like some old people walking out of a theater, and they were saying like, that one wasn't completely like the first Accountant, and I started to wonder like, oh no, have they have they turned against their own audience? Are they pushing them away? What's going on? That could just be me reading into stuff. I just thought it'd be funny to mention now. Number 5 was Until Dawn, making 3.8 million, adding to a domestic total of 14 million for David F. Sandberg. That sits behind Shazam 2 by 43 million. Worldwide, it is bumped up to 34 million. So although it is 100 million away from Shazam 2's worldwide run there, it did just double its initial production budget of 15 million, now over it by 4. So if they can squeak by to 45, that's a tripling point, baby. Like we were kind of saying, like, yeah, it had a pretty low opening, but even that was pretty good just based off of how low this budget is, and it seemed like they had the opening to, get past that point, unlike something like Drop or The Woman in the Yard, which, similar to what we're talking about with like The Accountant, it probably will continue to do well outside of here, and they did both like kind of get close enough or manage to squeak by their doubling points as far as like their initial production budgets, but it wasn't like a whole lot, and their openings seemed to not carry that weight either. Until Dawn is the exception though. Take a note out of fucking Screen Gems' book. Blumhouse. Number 6 is The Amateur, making 1.8 million, adding to a domestic total of 36 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 83. It seems like it's barely changed, and maybe it didn't. I can't tell anymore. My eyes are glazing over. Every time I look at The Amateur, I'm like, oh, fuck. It was so boring. It's whatever. I really don't have anything to add here. So let's move on to number 7, which is The King of Kings, making 1.6 million, adding to a domestic total of 57 for Angel Studios. That places it 127 million away from Sound of Freedom. Not going to get there. Worldwide, it is bumped up to 63 million, so 187 million away from Sound of Freedom. Believe it or not going to get there. But hey, it's still in theaters. Yeah, only positive. And it's not even like a good positive, it's just like a positive for Angel Studios, I guess. Like we've been discussing or theorizing or whatever, because it looks pretty, not that it looks awful, it just doesn't look, as high budgeted as some of your other animated films. They probably might even be in the clear with this 63 worldwide intake, so they're probably fine, and who cares. Number 8 is Warfare, making 1.2 million, adding to a domestic total of 24 million. Still, like, not able to outgross Ex Machina, for Alex Garland. Domestically, it's 1 million shy of it now. Worldwide, it is sitting at 28 million, so that is 10 million shy of Ex Machina. Who would have thought that Ex Machina would have been the one to beat? Since its initial production budget was 20 million, doubling point 40, they are about 12 million away from that now, as far as like getting to that point. So, is this movie successful? I don't know. A24 seems to be fine, still making all these other movies that aren't necessarily big box office hits. So, maybe they don't put that much into marketing, which actually wouldn't surprise me. Maybe, they're all good with the money they make or the stuff they make off of their shop with all those overpriced goods. But some of it is cool though, so can't deny that. And then closing out the video with 9 and 10. I say closing out the video, even though it's the last 2 movies. I mean, yeah, these are movies that, once again, I've not heard of. I had to go off of the number, because the numbers, sometimes you can tell with how they're updating the site, like, okay, something's amiss with these bottom 2. So I jumped over to Box Office Mojo and discovered these films. Now, number 10 we'll talk about in a second. At least by the time I'm recording this, something was weird about the Box Office Mojo website. Number 9, though, was HIT, or HIT, The Third Case. It made 955,000 on a budget of 60 to 65 crore. It almost cracked a million. Good on you. But then on Box Office Mojo for number 10, it said like untitled, for unknown film or something like that, like something unknown, untitled, something. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't a real movie title. So I like clicked on it, and the page on Box Office Mojo was even that. So I went to like their IMDb link section, and it took me to a film called Guru Nanak Jahaz, which apparently exists and apparently was played in enough theaters to crack the top 10. No idea what the budget of this thing is. I couldn't find a Wikipedia page for this even, but it allegedly made $685,000. If this turns out to be not true, then I don't know. I guess I guess I could say that about all of this, you know what I mean? Like, if any of this turns out to be not true, then oh well. We're done. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I'm once again going with Thunderbolts, and I'm also going to bank that it holds over at least decently well. I don't mean like it's going to hold over amazingly like Sinners, but at the very least it's going to have a decent hold just based off of word of mouth, I hope. Number 2, I think will still be Sinners. Number 3, Clown in a Cornfield. Number 4, a Minecraft movie. And then number 5, The Accountant 2. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.